The emergency council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 12 different species gathered around the holographic display. Ambassador Zexhai of the Rillan Confederation adjusted her breathing apparatus and looked at the swirling red dot that marked human space on the galactic map. "The situation has become impossible," she announced, her voice carrying the weight of desperation. "The Kronak Empire has already consumed 3 star systems this month alone. Their war machines show no mercy." Commander Thelera from the Vegan Alliance nodded grimly. "Our combined fleets cannot match their firepower. Every engagement ends in retreat or total destruction. We need a miracle." The hologram shifted to show the latest battle reports. Entire civilizations had been reduced to ash and debris. The Kronak Empire swept through space like a plague, turning thriving worlds into mining operations and slave camps. Their technology was ancient but devastating, their ships massive and nearly indestructible. "What about the humans?" asked Dr. Yilmon, the insectoid representative from the Hive Collective. His compound eyes reflected the red warning lights that flashed across the chamber. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Everyone knew about the humans, but few had direct contact with them. They were newcomers to galactic politics, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. Most species considered them primitive and barbaric. The Deathworlders? Zexhai's tentacles curled in disgust. They come from a planet so hostile that it should not support intelligent life. Their world has extreme weather, dangerous predators, and toxic plants. Even their water can kill most species. Thelera pulled up human data files on the display. Earth has gravity that would crush most of us. The atmospheric pressure alone would cause our organs to fail. And somehow they evolved there and call it home. The assembled representatives studied the information with growing unease. Earth's statistics read like a nightmare catalog of environmental hazards. Massive storms that could level cities, earthquakes that split continents, and temperatures that swung between freezing and boiling depending on the season. "Look at their entertainment," Dr. Yilmon clicked disapprovingly. "They create fictional stories about war, violence, and survival. Their children play games that simulate combat and death. What kind of species find such things amusing?" But Ambassador Kretok from the Stellar Republic raised a thin hand. "Perhaps that is exactly what we need. The Kronak respect only strength and violence. Our peaceful approaches have failed completely." The room erupted in worried chatter. Most galactic civilizations had evolved beyond physical conflict thousands of years ago. Wars were fought with economics, diplomacy, and technology. The idea of actually fighting seemed primitive and terrifying. "The humans still wage war among themselves," Zexhai pointed out. "They have weapons that could destroy their entire planet several times over. They test these weapons for sport. What does that tell us about their nature?" Thelera accessed more human files. Their military forces trained constantly for combat scenarios that most species would consider impossible. They practice fighting in environments that would kill us instantly. Desert worlds, frozen wastelands, underwater battles, even combat in the vacuum of space. The data painted a picture of a species that seemed designed for conflict. Humans could survive injuries that would be fatal to other races. They could function on minimal sleep, adapt to hostile environments, and maintain combat effectiveness under extreme stress. "I met a human trader once," admitted Kretok quietly. "He told me stories about their history. They fought wars that lasted decades with millions of casualties. They speak of these conflicts as if they were normal events." Dr. Yilmon's antennae twitched nervously. "They have never lost a species-wide war. Even when facing superior technology or numbers, they find ways to win. Their history is filled with victories against impossible odds." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Every other species in the galaxy had experienced devastating defeats at some point in their history. Conflicts that had humbled them and taught them the value of peace. Humans seemed to be the exception. But would they help us? Zexhai asked. "We have treated them as outcasts and primitives. Our trade agreements are minimal, and we exclude them from most diplomatic functions." Thelera brought up recent intelligence reports. Human expansion has been steady but peaceful. They establish colonies and trading posts, but they do not conquer or enslave. When pirates attack their merchant ships, the response is swift and decisive. No human vessel has ever been successfully hijacked twice. The representatives considered this information carefully. Pirates throughout the galaxy had learned to avoid ships bearing human identification. The few who had not learned this lesson were found later as drifting debris fields. Their diplomatic core is small but effective, Kretok added. When they negotiate, they speak plainly and keep their promises. They do not engage in the complex word games that we prefer. Dr. Yilmon accessed military databases. Human security forces are considered elite among mercenary organizations. Other species pay premium prices to hire human bodyguards and military advisors. They have a reputation for never abandoning their positions. The evidence was mounting, but fear remained. Humans were unpredictable by galactic standards. They made decisions based on emotion and instinct rather than careful calculation. They took risks that seemed suicidal to more cautious species. The Krenak Empire grows stronger each day, Zexhai reminded them. Our combined fleets will be exhausted within months. If we do nothing, they will eventually reach our core worlds. Telara nodded slowly. Perhaps it is time to admit that our civilized approach has failed. The Krenak understand only violence and domination. To defeat them, we may need to embrace methods that we have long abandoned. The vote was closer than expected, but the decision was made. A formal diplomatic mission would be sent to human space. They would request military assistance against the Krenak Empire, offering favorable trade agreements and technology exchanges in return. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, each carried the same thought. They were about to invite Deathworlders into a galactic conflict. There was no way to predict what would happen next, but desperate times called for desperate measures. The message would be sent within hours, traveling across space to reach the human homeworld. Soon they would learn whether the stories about human military prowess were true or simply exaggerated legends. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the Situation Room of Luna Base, watching the diplomatic message play for the third time. The alien ambassador spoke in carefully translated English, but the desperation in their voice needed no translation. "They want us to fight their war," muttered General Rodriguez, his weathered face showing skepticism. "After 50 years of treating us like dangerous animals, now they come begging for help." Chen nodded but kept her focus on the tactical displays surrounding them. The Krenak Empire's advance was clearly marked in red across the holographic star map. 3 systems had fallen in the past month, with entire populations either enslaved or killed. "Look at these casualty reports," said Colonel Williams, pulling up the latest intelligence data. "The Krenak don't just conquer territory. They eliminate anything that might resist them later. Men, women, children, it doesn't matter." The room fell silent as the numbers scrolled past. Billions of lives lost, entire species driven to the edge of extinction. The Krenak war machine showed no mercy and took no prisoners except for slaves. "Sir, we're receiving additional transmissions from multiple species," reported Lieutenant Morrison from the communications station. "The Vegan Alliance, the Hive Collective, even the Stellar Republic. They're all sending the same message." Chen walked over to study the incoming data. Every major power in the galaxy was reaching out to humanity for the first time in decades. Their messages varied in tone, but the content was identical. They needed military assistance against an enemy they could not defeat alone. "What do we know about Krenak capabilities?" Chen asked, turning to the intelligence briefing officer. Captain Zhang activated the holographic display, showing detailed scans of Krenak vessels. "Their ships are massive, Admiral. Some of them are over 5 kilometers long. Heavy armor plating, energy shields, and weapons that can crack a planet's crust." The assembled officers studied the enemy ships with professional interest. The Krenak vessels looked like floating cities, bristling with weapon systems and protected by energy barriers that had deflected every attack the Galactic Alliance had attempted. "But look at their design philosophy," Zhang continued. "Everything is built for maximum firepower and defense. They sacrifice speed and maneuverability for raw power. Their largest ships move like drifting mountains." General Rodriguez stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Sounds like they've never faced an enemy that could match their firepower, so they never learned to be agile. Classic case of fighting the last war instead of the next one." Chen pulled up human fleet compositions for comparison. Their ships were smaller and more nimble, designed for rapid deployment and tactical flexibility. Where the Krenak built massive battleships, humans preferred fast cruisers and carrier groups. "Admiral, there's something else," Zhang added, highlighting specific sections of the Krenak data. "Their military doctrine is based on overwhelming force applied to a single point. They concentrate their entire fleet for each attack, leaving their conquered territories lightly defended. Colonel Williams leaned forward. That's an interesting weakness. They're so focused on the next conquest that they don't properly garrison what they've already taken. The tactical implications were becoming clear. The Kronak Empire had grown powerful by using the same strategy repeatedly. Massive fleets would arrive in a system, destroy all resistance through superior firepower, then move on to the next target. It had worked perfectly against species that fought similar conventional battles. Sir, we're also receiving intelligence packages from our alien contacts, Morrison reported. Detailed fleet movements, weapon specifications, and strategic assessments. They're sharing everything they have. Chen reviewed the incoming data with growing interest. The Galactic Alliance had been fighting the Kronak for months, gathering detailed information about their enemies' capabilities and weaknesses. This intelligence was worth years of reconnaissance work. What's the status of our own fleet? Chen asked. Third Fleet is currently on patrol near the Centauri system, Rodriguez replied. Fifth Fleet just completed training exercises in the Sol system. Both are at full combat readiness. We also have rapid response squadrons stationed at key jump points. Chen studied the deployment maps carefully. Human space was relatively small compared to the ancient galactic empires, but their fleet was modern and well-trained. Every ship had been built with lessons learned from centuries of human warfare. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command, Morrison announced. President Martinez wants a full briefing within the hour. Chen nodded and began organizing her thoughts. The decision to enter a galactic war would not be made lightly. Earth's population was still recovering from the last interstellar conflict, and resources were limited despite recent technological advances. What are our strategic options? She asked the assembled staff. Colonel Williams activated the tactical display. Option 1 is to decline involvement entirely. We focus on defending human space and let the galaxy sort out its own problems. General Rodriguez shook his head. That's short-sighted. If the Kronak Empire absorbs the entire galaxy, we'll be facing them alone eventually. Better to fight them now while we have allies. Option 2 is limited engagement, Williams continued. We provide military advisors and some equipment but keep our main fleet in reserve. Low risk but also low impact. Captain Zhang highlighted specific enemy positions. Option 3 is full military intervention. We deploy our fleet alongside the Galactic Alliance and engage the Kronak directly. High risk but maximum chance of success. Chen considered each option while studying the intelligence reports. The Kronak Empire was unlike any enemy humanity had faced before. Their technology was advanced, their ships were powerful, and their ruthlessness was absolute. There's a fourth option, she said finally. We don't fight their war. We fight our war, using our methods and our strengths. The room grew quiet as the officers considered this approach. Human military doctrine had evolved through countless conflicts on Earth and in space. It emphasized speed, adaptability, and striking at unexpected targets. The Galactic Alliance has been fighting defensively, Chen continued. They wait for the Kronak to attack, then try to hold their ground. That plays to the enemy's strengths. Rodriguez smiled grimly. But if we take the offensive, hit them where they don't expect it, we change the entire dynamic of the conflict. Chen pulled up star charts showing Kronak territory. They've conquered 3 systems in the past month, but those conquests are only lightly defended. While their main fleet advances, their supply lines are vulnerable. The strategic picture was becoming clearer. The Kronak Empire had grown by following a predictable pattern. They concentrated overwhelming force for each attack, then moved on to the next target. Their rear areas were protected only by garrison forces and orbital defenses. Admiral, incoming transmission from the President, Morrison reported. Chen straightened her uniform and activated the secure communication link. President Martinez appeared on the main screen, flanked by the Joint Chiefs of Staff and senior civilian advisors. Admiral, I've reviewed the alien requests for assistance, Martinez began. What's your assessment of the situation? Chen gestured to the tactical display surrounding her. Mr. President, this is an opportunity to reshape our position in the galaxy. The Kronak Empire represents a genuine threat to human interests, but they've also revealed significant weaknesses. The President leaned forward. Explain. Sir, every major galactic power is requesting our help. If we succeed in stopping the Kronak, humanity will be seen as the species that saved the galaxy. Our diplomatic and trade position will be transformed overnight. Martinez nodded slowly. And if we fail? Chen met his gaze steadily. Then we'll face the Kronak Empire eventually anyway, but without allies and after they've absorbed the resources of the entire galaxy. The human response arrived faster than anyone in the Galactic Alliance had expected. Ambassador HFY stared at the simple message displayed on her personal communicator, reading it several times to make sure she understood correctly. Message received. Fleet deploying. Expect contact in 72 hours. Admiral Chen, 3rd Fleet. 72 hours? Dr. Yilman's compound eyes widened in disbelief. It took us 3 weeks just to organize this emergency council. How can they mobilize an entire fleet in 3 days? Commander Thalara was already accessing human fleet movements through long-range sensors. They're not mobilizing. They're already moving. Look at these readings. The main display showed dozens of human ships emerging from hyperspace at strategic jump points throughout the sector. Fast cruisers, heavy destroyers, and massive carrier vessels appeared in perfect formation, as if they had been planning this operation for months. Impossible, breathed Ambassador Kretok. No species can coordinate fleet movements that quickly. There must be some mistake in our sensor readings, but the data was clear. Human vessels were taking position at key strategic points, creating a defensive perimeter around the remaining free systems. Their movement was precise and purposeful, showing a level of military coordination that impressed even veteran space commanders. HFY activated the communication system. This is Ambassador HFY to Admiral Chen. We did not expect such a rapid response to our request for assistance. The reply came within minutes, the human admiral's voice clear and confident. Ambassador, when someone asks for help stopping genocide, you don't waste time with committees and paperwork. Our fleet is moving to intercept the next Kronak advance. Dr. Yilman leaned toward the communicator. Admiral, we should coordinate our strategies. The Galactic Defense Council has prepared detailed battle plans based on months of combat experience. A pause. Then Admiral Chen's voice returned, carrying a tone that made the alien diplomats uncomfortable. Doctor, with respect, your battle plans have resulted in 3 conquered systems and billions of casualties. We'll be trying a different approach. The connection ended abruptly, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. No one had ever spoken to the Galactic Defense Council with such casual dismissal of their authority and expertise. The arrogance of these Deathworlders, HFY muttered. They have no experience fighting the Kronak Empire. They will learn why we have suffered so many defeats. But Commander Thalara was studying the human fleet dispositions with growing respect. Look at their positioning. They're not preparing to defend static positions. They're setting up for mobile operations. The tactical display showed human ships spread across multiple systems, but not in the concentrated formations that the Galactic Alliance preferred. Instead, they formed small independent task forces capable of rapid redeployment. What are they planning? Kretok wondered aloud. Their answer came 18 hours later, when long-range sensors detected a massive Kronak fleet moving toward the Altair system. The enemy force included over 200 vessels, including several of their largest dreadnoughts. It was the same overwhelming concentration of firepower that had crushed every previous defense. The humans must be warned, Dr. Yilman declared. The Kronak fleet is 3 times larger than their 3rd fleet. They will be annihilated. Emergency communications were sent to Admiral Chen, along with detailed intelligence about the approaching enemy force. The Galactic Alliance prepared to witness another devastating defeat, this time involving their new human allies. But the human response was unexpected. Instead of concentrating their fleet to meet the Kronak advance, Admiral Chen's ships scattered across the sector. Small squadrons moved to positions that seemed random and tactically useless. They're retreating before the battle even begins, HFY observed with disappointment. Perhaps the humans are not as brave as their reputation suggests. The Kronak fleet reached the Altair system and began their standard bombardment pattern. Massive energy beams lanced down from orbit, reducing cities to rubble and preparing landing zones for ground forces. It was a scene that had been repeated dozens of times across the galaxy. Then the first human strike force appeared. 6 fast cruisers dropped out of hyperspace directly behind the Kronak formation, their weapons already charging. Before the enemy could react, concentrated fire from human particle cannons tore through the rear shields of 3 Kronak support vessels. Direct hit on enemy logistics ships, came Admiral Chen's calm voice over the communication channels. Strike Force Alpha withdrawing to hyperspace. The human ships vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving the Kronak fleet in confusion. Enemy commanders tried to turn their massive vessels to face the new threat, but the attackers were already gone. "Brilliant," whispered Commander Thelara. "They're not trying to fight the main fleet. They're targeting the support vessels." More human task forces began appearing throughout Kronak territory. Strike Force Beta hit a supply convoy near the Vega system. Strike Force Gamma destroyed orbital facilities above a recently conquered world. Each attack was swift, precise, and devastating. The pattern became clear as reports flooded in from across the sector. While the Kronak main fleet was focused on conquering the Altair system, human forces were systematically destroying their supply lines and rear area installations. "The humans are fighting like pirates," Dr. Yilmon complained. "This is not honorable warfare," but Kretok was studying the tactical reports with growing admiration. "Look at the results. In 6 hours they have destroyed more Kronak assets than we managed in 6 months of conventional battles." The Kronak Empire was experiencing something they had never encountered before. Their overwhelming main fleet was winning the battle for Altair, but their conquered territory was under constant attack. Supply convoys were being hunted down, communication relays were being destroyed, and garrison forces were fighting for their lives. "Admiral Chen," Zexhai contacted the human commander. "Your tactics are unconventional. The Kronak fleet is still advancing toward our core systems." "Ambassador, the Kronak fleet is about to discover that winning battles and winning wars are two different things," came the reply. "Their advance stops when they run out of fuel and ammunition." The truth of this statement became apparent over the following days. The massive Kronak fleet had conquered the Altair system, but they could not advance further. Their supply lines had been cut, their fuel depots destroyed, and their communication networks disrupted. Human strike forces continued their relentless campaign, appearing without warning to destroy infrastructure and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. The Kronak Empire found itself controlling territory but unable to support or defend it effectively. "The humans are rewriting the rules of space warfare," Commander Thelara observed. "They're proving that mobility and intelligence can defeat raw firepower." Dr. Yilmon was reviewing casualty reports with amazement. "Human losses are minimal. They engage only when they have overwhelming local superiority, then withdraw before the enemy can respond." The Kronak commanders were growing desperate. Their fleets were powerful but slow, designed for crushing static defenses rather than chasing fast-moving raiders. Every attempt to trap human forces resulted in empty space and destroyed supply dumps. "Admiral Chen," Zexhai sent another message. "The Galactic Defense Council would like to coordinate our remaining forces with your operations." The human admiral's response was immediate. "Ambassador, prepare your fleets for rapid assault operations. We're about to teach the Kronak Empire what happens when you threaten a Deathworld species." For the first time in months, the alien representatives felt something they had almost forgotten. Hope was returning to the galaxy, carried by ships that moved like hunting wolves among the stars. The humans had not just joined the war, they had transformed it completely. The Kronak Empire was about to learn that some species fought wars differently than others, and humans had been fighting wars longer than most civilizations had existed. War leader Kruk smashed his massive fist against the command console, causing several junior officers to flinch away from their stations. The bridge of the Kronak flagship World Breaker had never seen its commander in such a state of rage. "Explain to me how these primitive mammals have destroyed 40% of our supply infrastructure." Krux growled, his voice carrying the menace that had intimidated countless species into submission. Fleetmaster Gornath consulted his tactical displays with visible nervousness. "War leader, the humans employ tactics that are unconventional. They do not stand and fight as civilized species do. Instead, they strike our weakest points and flee before we can respond." Crux's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You mean they fight like cowards?" "Perhaps, war leader, but their cowardice is proving effective. Our advanced fleets are running low on ammunition and fuel. 3 of our conquered systems have fallen back to enemy control after their garrisons were destroyed." The war leader studied the holographic battle map, watching red indicators flash as more Kronak positions came under attack. Each blinking light represented destroyed facilities, dead soldiers, or severed supply lines. "How many ships do these humans command?" Crux demanded. "Intelligence estimates suggest approximately 100 vessels, war leader." Significantly smaller than our main battle fleet, Crux roared in frustration. 100 ships? We have over 800 vessels in this sector alone. How can such a small force cause this much damage? Gornath pulled up detailed combat reports from the past week. War leader, the humans never engage our main fleets directly. They appear without warning, destroy specific targets, then vanish into hyperspace before we can intercept them. The tactical data painted a disturbing picture. Human forces struck with surgical precision, targeting fuel depots, ammunition stores, communication relays, and supply convoys. They avoided heavily defended positions but devastated everything that kept the Kronak war machine functioning. War leader, interrupted Communications Master Vex. We are receiving a transmission from the human fleet commander. Crux straightened in his command throne. Put it through. I want to see the face of this coward who refuses to fight honorably. The main screen activated, showing Admiral Chen standing calmly on her ship's bridge. Her expression was professional, but carried an undertone of steel that made several Kronak officers uncomfortable. War leader Crux, Chen began, her voice clear and confident. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Third Fleet. I'm calling to offer you terms for surrender. The bridge fell silent except for the low growl emanating from Crux's throat. No one had ever offered the Kronak Empire terms of surrender. They were always the ones making such demands. You dare mock me, human? Crux snarled. Your pathetic fleet runs from battle like frightened children. You have no honor. Chen's expression did not change. War leader. Honor is a luxury that we gave up when you started committing genocide against civilian populations. As for running from battle, let me show you something. The transmission split screen to show tactical displays from across Kronak territory. Red indicators marked dozens of facilities under attack by human forces. Supply convoys burned in space while fast human cruisers hunted down fleeing transport ships. In the past 72 hours, my fleet has destroyed 60% of your logistical infrastructure in this sector, Chen continued. Your advanced fleets are now cut off from resupply. Your conquered territories are defenseless against liberation forces. Crux studied the displays with growing alarm. The scope of the coordinated attacks was staggering. Human forces had struck targets across dozens of star systems simultaneously, crippling the entire Kronak supply network. This is impossible, Fleet Master Gornath whispered. Such coordination requires months of planning and intelligence gathering. Chen heard the comment through the open channel. Fleet Master, we've been watching your empire for months, learning your patterns and identifying your weaknesses. You're very predictable for a species that claims to be superior. The insult hit home. Kronak military doctrine was based on overwhelming force applied through massive fleets. They had never needed to be subtle or unpredictable because raw power had always been sufficient. War leader, Chen continued, your empire is now facing a choice. Withdraw your fleets from all conquered territories and return to your original borders, or watch your entire military infrastructure collapse over the next few weeks. Crux's rage was building to dangerous levels. You threaten me with 100 ships? I will crush your fleet personally and use your bones to decorate my throne room. Chen smiled coldly. War leader, you still don't understand what you're facing. You're not fighting 100 ships. You're fighting a species that has been perfecting warfare for thousands of years. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Kronak bridge in tense silence. Crux turned to his tactical officers with murder in his eyes. Find their main fleet, he ordered. I want every human ship destroyed within the week. But finding the human fleet proved impossible. Their ships moved constantly, appearing for brief attacks then vanishing into hyperspace. Long-range sensors could track their general movements. But by the time Kronak forces arrived at any location, the humans were already gone. War leader, reported Intelligence Master Drex. We have identified 17 different human task forces operating independently across our territory. They coordinate their attacks but maintain separate operational areas. Crux studied the tactical map with growing frustration. Traditional Kronak strategy involved concentrating superior firepower to crush enemy resistance, but the humans refused to provide a target for such tactics. What of our own raids into human territory? Crux demanded. Drex's scales darkened with embarrassment. War leader, every probe we have sent into human space has been destroyed or driven back. Their border defenses are formidable. The reports painted a humiliating picture. Kronak scout fleets had encountered layered defensive networks that channeled attackers into carefully prepared kill zones. Human defensive tactics were as innovative as their offensive operations. War Leader, Communications Master Vex announced, "We are receiving distress calls from the Rigel garrison. They report human forces attacking the orbital platforms." Crux activated the tactical display, watching in real time as human ships systematically destroyed Kronak installations above the conquered world. The attack was methodical and devastating, leaving nothing functional in orbit. "Send the 4th Battle Group to intercept," Crux ordered. "War Leader, the 4th Battle Group is 6 hours away at maximum speed. The human attack will be completed long before our arrival." Crux slammed his fist against the console again, cracking the durable material. "Then send orders to all garrison commanders. Concentrate defenses around critical installations. Make the humans pay for every attack." But the new orders only made the situation worse. When Kronak forces concentrated their defenses, human raiders simply struck undefended targets elsewhere. When they spread their forces thin, human task forces overwhelmed isolated positions with local superiority. "War Leader," Fleet Master Gornath said carefully, "perhaps we should consider negotiating with the humans." Their Admiral Chen seemed reasonable. The suggestion nearly cost Gornath his life. Crux's claws extended as he turned toward his subordinate with deadly intent. "The Kronak Empire does not negotiate with inferior species," Crux snarled. "We will find a way to defeat these humans, and then we will make them suffer for their insolence." But privately, Crux was beginning to understand the magnitude of the challenge facing his empire. The humans fought unlike any enemy the Kronak had encountered. They were patient, methodical, and utterly ruthless in their targeting of strategic assets. More disturbing was their apparent immunity to fear. Kronak psychological warfare had always been as important as their military might. Species across the galaxy submitted rather than face the terrible reputation of Kronak brutality. The humans seemed genuinely unconcerned by threats of torture, enslavement, or genocide. They responded to Kronak intimidation with increased aggression rather than submission. It was as if they had seen worse things than anything the Kronak could imagine. "War Leader," Drex reported, "intelligence analysis suggests the humans are preparing for a major offensive operation. Long-range sensors detect fleet movements toward the Canopus system." Crux felt a moment of hope. If the humans were finally massing for a conventional battle, the Kronak could use their superior numbers and firepower to crush them decisively. "Concentrate the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd battle groups at Canopus," he ordered. "We will end this war with one decisive engagement." But as Kronak fleets moved toward what they thought would be the final battle, human raiders struck undefended positions throughout the Empire. The trap was perfectly designed, drawing the main Kronak forces away from their territory just as human liberation fleets arrived to free conquered worlds. The liberation of Kepler 442 began at exactly SO600 Galactic Standard Time, when Admiral Chen's task force dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation above the occupied world. The planet's surface showed the scars of Kronak occupation, burned cities, slave camps, and massive strip mining operations that had devastated entire continents. "Admiral, we're detecting approximately 50 Kronak vessels in orbit," reported Commander Jackson from the sensor station. "Mix of heavy cruisers and support ships. The main battle fleets are still 6 hours away at the Canopus system." Chen nodded, studying the tactical display that showed enemy positions around the planet. The Kronak had followed predictable patterns, concentrating their defensive forces around key orbital facilities, while leaving large gaps in their coverage. "Signal the Liberation Fleet," Chen ordered. "All ships are cleared for combat operations. Priority targets are the orbital slave processing stations and communication arrays." The human fleet moved with practiced efficiency, dividing into smaller task forces that approached the planet from multiple vectors. Unlike the massive Kronak formations, human ships operated in coordinated but independent groups, each with specific objectives. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface," Communications Officer Torres announced. "It's coming from the underground resistance movement." The main screen activated, showing a Reelan female whose scales were marked with scars and burns from Kronak torture devices. Despite her injuries, her eyes burned with determination. "Human ships, this is Resistance Leader Vexara. We have been monitoring your operations across the sector. Our forces are ready to support your attack." Chen leaned forward. "Vexara, what's the status of the civilian population?" "Approximately 2 million survivors in labor camps scattered across the northern continent." The Kronak have been using them for mining operations and construction projects. We can provide target data for the guard towers and security systems. The Admiral turned to her tactical officer. Colonel Martinez, coordinate with the Resistance. I want precision strikes on all slave camp defenses, but no damage to civilian areas. The battle for Kepler 442 began with a series of simultaneous attacks across the planet's orbital space. Human ships emerged from behind the planet's moons, striking at communication satellites and defense platforms before the Kronak could organize a response. Strike Force Alpha engaged the enemy fleet directly, drawing attention away from the more vulnerable targets. The Kronak ships were powerful but slow to maneuver, struggling to track the fast-moving human vessels that darted between them like angry hornets. Direct hit on enemy command ship, reported Weapons Officer Kim. Their coordination is breaking down. While the space battle raged above, specialized human assault ships descended toward the planet's surface. These vessels carried marine units trained specifically for liberation operations, equipped with weapons and tactics designed to minimize civilian casualties. Marine Commander Stevens to Admiral Chen, came the report from the surface. First wave is on the ground. Resistance fighters are guiding us to the slave camps. Enemy ground forces are retreating toward their fortified positions. Chen watched the tactical display as green markers indicated successful human landings across the planet's surface. Each Marine unit was supported by resistance fighters who knew the terrain and enemy positions intimately. The coordination between human forces and local resistance groups was seamless, the result of months of preparation and intelligence gathering. While the Galactic Alliance had focused on large-scale fleet battles, humans had been building networks of contacts and supporters throughout Kronak territory. Admiral, enemy reinforcements are approaching from the outer system, Jackson reported. 3 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought. Estimated arrival in 40 minutes. Chen considered the tactical situation. The human fleet could handle the approaching reinforcements, but the liberation operation needed time to complete. Thousands of civilians were still trapped in heavily guarded facilities. Signal Strike Force Bravo, she ordered. Move to intercept the incoming enemy ships. Keep them busy while we finish here. The human vessels moved to engage the Kronak reinforcements at maximum range, using their superior speed and maneuverability to conduct hit-and-run attacks. Each engagement drew the enemy ships further from the planet while inflicting steady damage. Surface operations update, Stevens reported. We've liberated 12 of the 15 major slave camps. Resistance fighters are leading civilians to evacuation zones. Kronak ground forces are consolidating around their command center. Chen nodded approvingly. The operation was proceeding exactly as planned. Human forces had achieved tactical surprise, neutralized enemy defenses, and were systematically freeing the captive population. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Canopus system, Torres announced. It's from War Leader Crux himself. The main screen showed the Kronak commander on his flagship bridge, rage evident in every line of his massive form. Behind him, tactical displays showed the concentration of Kronak battle fleets waiting for a human attack that would never come. Human Admiral, Crux snarled, you will pay for this deception. My fleets will hunt down every one of your ships and destroy them slowly. Chen's expression remained calm and professional. War Leader, your fleets are 6 hours away from any meaningful target. By the time you reach us, this planet will be liberated and my ships will be gone. The Kronak commander's fury was magnificent to behold. You dare mock the might of the Kronak Empire? We have ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years. And in those 1,000 years, you've learned exactly one tactic, Chen replied. Overwhelming force applied directly. It's made you predictable, War Leader. And predictable enemies are easily defeated. The transmission ended as Crux smashed his console in rage. Chen turned back to the tactical displays where the liberation operation was reaching its final stages. Surface teams report all major slave camps are secure, Stevens announced. Civilian evacuation is proceeding ahead of schedule. Resistance fighters are providing excellent support. The space battle had also turned decisively in favor of the human forces. Kronak ships burned in orbit around the planet, their crews either dead or fleeing in escape pods. The enemy reinforcements had been driven back with heavy losses. Admiral, long-range sensors show the main Kronak fleet is finally moving from Canopus, Jackson reported. But they're still 5 hours away at maximum speed. Chen smiled grimly. Signal all ships. We'll be long gone before they arrive. Set course for the Procyon system. Intelligence reports another occupied world that needs liberation. The evacuation of civilians proceeded with military efficiency. Human medical ships treated injured survivors while transport vessels carried them to safety. Resistance fighters who chose to continue the fight were equipped with advanced weapons and communication gear. Admiral, Vexara appeared on the communication screen again. "How can we thank you for what you have done here?" Chen's expression softened slightly. "Vexara, the best thanks you can give us is to keep fighting. Help other worlds resist the Kronak occupation. Show the galaxy that tyranny can be defeated." The Rillan resistance leader nodded firmly. "We will spread the word. The humans have shown us that the Kronak are not invincible. Other worlds will find hope in your victory here." As the human fleet prepared to depart, tactical officers compiled after-action reports. The liberation of Kepler 442 had been a complete success, achieved with minimal casualties and maximum psychological impact. "Admiral, we're receiving messages from resistance groups on 17 different worlds," Torres reported. "They're requesting support for liberation operations." Chen studied the incoming requests, noting the locations and estimated enemy strength at each target. The human fleet had ignited a galaxy-wide uprising against Kronak rule, but they would need to be selective about which operations to support directly. Colonel Martinez, "Begin planning for simultaneous operations against 3 targets," she ordered. "We'll support the resistance movements that have the best chance of success." The human ships entered hyperspace, leaving behind a liberated world and a growing network of resistance fighters. War leader Crux would arrive to find empty space and another devastating blow to Kronak prestige. More importantly, the liberation of Kepler 442 had demonstrated something that the galaxy had forgotten. Occupied worlds could be freed, enslaved populations could be rescued, and the mighty Kronak Empire could be defeated. The message spread through underground networks and secret communications channels. Humans were not just fighting the Kronak military forces. They were offering hope to billions of oppressed beings throughout the galaxy. And hope, as the Kronak were about to learn, was the most dangerous weapon of all. The Kronak War Council convened an emergency session aboard the flagship World Breaker, with holographic representatives from across the Empire participating in what many considered the most critical meeting in Kronak history. War leader Crux stood before the assembled commanders, his massive form radiating the fury that had been building for weeks. 17 worlds, he announced, his voice carrying barely controlled rage. 17 worlds liberated by human forces in the past month. Our empire is bleeding territory faster than we can reinforce it. Fleetmaster Gornath consulted his tactical displays with visible nervousness. War leader, our intelligence networks report active resistance movements on 43 additional worlds. The humans have somehow coordinated uprisings across the entire sector. The holographic images of sector commanders flickered as they reported similar problems throughout Kronak space. Supply lines disrupted, communication networks compromised, and garrison forces under constant attack by emboldened resistance fighters. "How is this possible?" demanded war leader Throck from the Vega sector. "These humans number barely 100 ships. We command over 2,000 vessels across the Empire." Admiral Chen's image appeared on the main communication screen, interrupting the War Council with her calm presence. The fact that she could penetrate their most secure channel sent a chill through the assembled Kronak commanders. "War leader Crux," Chen began, "I see you're having difficulty adapting to modern warfare. Perhaps it's time we discuss terms for ending this conflict." The bridge fell silent except for the low growls emanating from multiple Kronak throats. No enemy had ever interrupted their strategic planning sessions, and the casual breach of their security was deeply unsettling. "Human," Crux snarled, "your tricks and cowardice will not save you. The might of the Kronak Empire will crush your pathetic fleet." Chen's expression showed mild amusement. "War leader, I'm curious about something. In your 1,000-year history of conquest, have you ever faced an enemy that fought back effectively?" The question caught Crux off guard. "All enemies fall before Kronak might eventually." "That's not what I asked," Chen pressed. "Have you ever fought a war against opponents who were actually trying to win, rather than just trying to survive your initial assault?" The uncomfortable silence stretched across the bridge as the implications sank in. Kronak military doctrine was based on overwhelming force applied against civilizations that fought defensively, trying to protect their homeworlds and populations. The humans are teaching us something disturbing. admitted Intelligence Master Drex quietly. Our enemies have always tried to defend what they already possessed. These Deathworlders are actively trying to take what we possess. Chen nodded approvingly. Finally, someone is beginning to understand. War Leader, your empire expanded by attacking species that valued their own lives and civilizations. You threatened what they loved and they surrendered rather than see it destroyed. Crux's eyes narrowed dangerously. And humans do not value their own lives? We value them enough to risk them for something greater, Chen replied. Freedom for the oppressed, justice for the innocent, and an end to tyranny wherever we find it. The transmission showed tactical displays from across Kronak territory, highlighting the systematic destruction of their military infrastructure. Human strike forces had been operating with surgical precision, targeting exactly the assets needed to maintain imperial control. Your empire is like a predator that has grown fat and slow, Chen continued. You've forgotten how to fight against prey that bites back. But humans evolved on a world where everything tried to kill us. We learned to be the apex predator. War Leader Throck's hologram leaned forward aggressively. Human Admiral, you speak of apex predators, but you have seen nothing of true Kronak power. We have been fighting with restraint, following the old codes of honorable warfare. Chen's laugh was cold and humorless. Honorable warfare? Is that what you call genocide, slavery, and the systematic destruction of entire civilizations? The accusation hit home because it was accurate. Kronak honor applied only to combat between military forces. Their treatment of civilian populations had always been ruthless and absolute. War Leader, Chen's tone became serious. Let me explain what's about to happen to your empire. Phase 1 was reconnaissance and harassment, designed to probe your defenses and coordinate with resistance movements. That phase is complete. Crux felt a chill of foreboding. What is Phase 2? Systematic dismantlement of your military capabilities, Chen replied. We've identified every major shipyard, training facility, and command center in your empire. Over the next month, all of them will be destroyed. The tactical displays updated to show red targeting indicators on hundreds of installations throughout Kronak space. The scope of the planned attacks was staggering, covering strategic targets across dozens of star systems. Impossible, Fleet Master Gornath protested. Such an operation would require thousands of ships and months of preparation. Chen smiled coldly. Fleet Master, you're still thinking in terms of Kronak military doctrine. Massive fleets, overwhelming force, direct assault. We're going to teach you about distributed warfare. The transmission split to show multiple human task forces moving simultaneously toward their targets. Each group was small but heavily armed, capable of striking quickly and withdrawing before reinforcements could arrive. Admiral, War Leader Crux said carefully, surely we can reach some accommodation. The Kronak Empire is vast and ancient. There is room in this galaxy for both our species. War Leader, 3 months ago, there might have been room for negotiation, Chen replied. But then we saw what you did to the civilian populations on the worlds you conquered. Some lines once crossed cannot be uncrossed. The human admiral's expression hardened with resolve. You made this a war of extermination when you started committing genocide. Now you get to learn what it feels like to be on the receiving end. The transmission ended, leaving the Kronak War Council in stunned silence. For the first time in their imperial history, they were facing an enemy that sought not just victory, but their complete destruction as a military power. War Leader, Communications Master Vex announced. We are receiving reports of attacks beginning across the Empire. Human forces are striking shipyards in the Centauri sector. More reports flooded in as the human offensive began in earnest. Unlike previous raids, these attacks were sustained and devastating. Human forces would arrive, destroy their targets completely, then move to the next objective without pause. How many ships are they deploying? Crux demanded. Intelligence estimates suggest at least 500 vessels are participating in the current offensive, Drex reported. But that's impossible. Human space could not support such a large fleet. The truth was more disturbing than anyone wanted to admit. Humanity had been preparing for this war since first contact with the galactic community. Their entire industrial capacity had been focused on building ships and training crews for exactly this type of campaign. War Leader, urged Fleet Master Gornath, we must concentrate our forces to defend the most critical installations. The Empire cannot survive the loss of our major shipyards. But concentration of forces played directly into human tactical advantages. When Kronak fleets moved to defend one target, human forces would strike 3 others simultaneously. Their enemies always seemed to know exactly where the defenders were not. "Sir," reported Vex, "the humans are broadcasting on all communication channels. They're addressing the civilian populations directly." The main screen showed Admiral Chen speaking calmly to the camera, but her words carried across the galaxy to billions of oppressed beings living under Kronak rule. "Citizens of the galaxy," Chen began, "the human fleet is moving to liberate your worlds from Kronak occupation. Resistance movements should prepare to support liberation operations. Freedom is coming." The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Kronak rule had always depended on the fear and hopelessness of subject populations. The promise of liberation from humanity's most effective military force changed everything. "War leader," Drex reported grimly, "we're detecting uprisings on 37 worlds simultaneously. Local garrison forces are requesting immediate reinforcement." Crux stared at the tactical displays showing his empire dissolving into chaos. Human military pressure was combining with internal rebellion to create an impossible strategic situation. "Admiral Chen," he transmitted on an open channel, "you are destroying the stability of the entire galaxy. Without Kronak order, there will be chaos and war between species." The human admiral's response was swift and uncompromising. "War leader, stability built on oppression and fear is not worth preserving. The galaxy will be better off without your empire." As reports continued to flood in from across Kronak territory, one thing became clear. The humans were not just fighting a war, they were conducting a revolution that would reshape the balance of power throughout the galaxy. 6 months after the first human ship entered Kronak space, Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching the final surrender ceremony unfold in the space above the former Kronak homeworld. The planet below showed signs of rapid reconstruction as liberated populations worked to rebuild their civilization. The once mighty Kronak Empire had collapsed not in a single decisive battle, but through the systematic destruction of their ability to wage war. Human forces had dismantled shipyards, captured supply depots, and liberated every occupied world until the Imperial fleet had nowhere to refuel, rearm, or retreat. "Admiral," Commander Jackson reported from the bridge, "War Leader Crux is requesting permission to come aboard for the formal surrender." Chen nodded, straightening her dress uniform. The moment she had been working towards since the war began was finally at hand. The galaxy's most oppressive empire was about to formally acknowledge defeat. The ceremony took place in the main hangar bay, with representatives from dozens of liberated species gathered to witness the historic moment. Ambassador Zexhai stood near the front, her tentacles curled with satisfaction as she watched the proceedings. War Leader Crux entered the hangar flanked by 2 human marine guards, his massive form diminished by the weight of absolute defeat. The Kronak commander who had once terrorized the galaxy now looked old and broken, his empire reduced to a handful of worlds under human occupation. "War Leader," Admiral Chen began, her voice carrying throughout the hangar, "do you understand the terms of surrender as presented?" Crux's voice was barely a whisper. "The Kronak Empire formally surrenders all military forces to human command. All occupied territories are to be liberated immediately. War crimes tribunals will be established to prosecute those responsible for genocide and slavery." The formal language could not capture the magnitude of what was happening. A 1,000-year empire that had ruled through fear and brutality was ending, not with a heroic last stand, but with a whimper of exhausted defeat. "The Kronak people will be relocated to their original homeworld under human supervision," Chen continued. "Your military forces will be disbanded and your weapons technology will be destroyed. Do you accept these terms?" "I accept," Crux replied, his voice filled with the weight of inevitable consequence. The surrender document was signed with primitive writing instruments, as if the moment required something more substantial than electronic signatures. Each representative of the liberated species added their mark to the historic agreement. Dr. Yilmon approached the podium as the ceremony concluded, his compound eyes reflecting the lights of the assembled ships outside. "Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Alliance, I want to express our gratitude for humanity's intervention in this conflict." Chen nodded respectfully. "Doctor, we did what any civilized species should do when faced with genocide. The question now is what kind of galaxy we want to build together." The reconstruction efforts were already underway across former Kronak territory. Human engineering teams worked alongside liberated populations to rebuild infrastructure, and establish new governments. The transition from empire to freedom was complex and challenging, but progress was evident everywhere. Admiral, Ambassador Zexai approached privately after the ceremony. There are concerns among some species about human intentions. Your fleet has demonstrated overwhelming military superiority. What assurances can you provide that humanity will not become the next galactic empire? Chen considered the question carefully. It was the natural fear of species that had just experienced liberation from one oppressive power. Ambassador, humanity has no interest in ruling other species. Our goal was always to end the Kronak threat and restore freedom to oppressed populations. The human fleet was already beginning to withdraw from most liberated systems, leaving behind only small advisory groups and humanitarian aid missions. The actions spoke louder than any diplomatic promises could. But surely humanity deserves some compensation for the costs of this war. Zexai pressed. Your military expenses must have been enormous. Chen smiled slightly. Ambassador, the galaxy's freedom is compensation enough. However, we would appreciate improved trade relationships and cultural exchanges with our new allies. The diplomatic negotiations that followed the surrender were surprisingly straightforward. Humanity's modest requests for trade agreements and peaceful cooperation contrasted sharply with the tribute demands that had characterized Kronak diplomacy. Commander, Delara from the Vegan Alliance approached with tactical reports in hand. Admiral, our analysts have been studying human military capabilities demonstrated during the war. Your fleet coordination and strategic planning exceed anything we thought possible. Chen reviewed the data with professional interest. Commander, warfare has been humanity's specialty for thousands of years. We've learned hard lessons about tactics, logistics, and strategic planning. The human military doctrine that had defeated the Kronak Empire was being studied intensively by galactic military academies. The concepts of distributed warfare, precision targeting, and coordinated resistance operations were revolutionary to species accustomed to conventional fleet battles. Admiral, Dr. Yilman joined the conversation. There is another matter we must discuss. The liberated populations are requesting human assistance in establishing new governments. Many of them have lived under Kronak rule for generations and lack experience with democratic institutions. Chen nodded thoughtfully. We can provide advisors and examples, but each species must choose their own form of government. Humanity believes in self-determination, not imposed solutions. The reconstruction process was proceeding better than anyone had dared hope. Species that had been enslaved for decades were proving remarkably resilient, quickly adapting to freedom and beginning to rebuild their civilizations. Admiral Chen, came a transmission from Earth. President Martinez sends congratulations on the successful conclusion of the war. When can we expect the fleet to return home? Chen looked out at the bustling activity surrounding the former Kronak homeworld, where human and alien workers labored together to establish a new order based on cooperation rather than domination. Mr. President, she replied, the military phase of our mission is complete, but our work here is just beginning. The galaxy needs time to heal from the wounds inflicted by Kronak rule. The human fleet would remain in reduced numbers to help with reconstruction efforts and provide security, guarantees for newly liberated worlds. It was a commitment that would last for years, but one that humanity willingly accepted. 3 months after the surrender ceremony, Admiral Chen received a final message from war leader Crux, now a prisoner awaiting trial for war crimes. The communication was brief and unexpectedly philosophical. Admiral, the message began, I have had time to consider the defeat of my empire. We ruled through fear because we believed that was the only way to maintain order. You have shown the galaxy that there is another path. Chen read the message with mixed emotions. Crux was responsible for countless atrocities, but his acknowledgement of defeat carried a dignity that had been absent during his reign of terror. Perhaps, the message continued, the Kronak Empire fell not because of human military superiority, but because we never learned the difference between ruling and leading. Your species has taught the galaxy that true strength comes from inspiring others, rather than crushing them. The transformation of the galaxy was remarkable to witness. Trade networks that had been disrupted by Kronak conquest were quickly re-established. Cultural exchanges flourished between species that had been isolated for decades. Scientific cooperation accelerated technological development across multiple civilizations. Admiral, Ambassador Zexhai reported during their final meeting. The Galactic Council has voted unanimously to offer humanity permanent membership with full diplomatic status. Your species has earned its place among the civilized worlds. Chen accepted the honor on behalf of humanity, knowing that it represented not just recognition of military victory, but acknowledgement of the values that had motivated human intervention in the first place. The human fleet finally departed for Earth 1 year after the war's end, leaving behind a galaxy transformed by their actions. Liberated worlds had established stable governments. Trade was flourishing, and the specter of Kronak tyranny had been relegated to history. As her ship entered hyperspace for the journey home, Admiral Chen reflected on the price of peace. The war had cost thousands of human lives and consumed enormous resources, but it had also prevented the extinction of entire species and restored freedom to billions of beings. The galaxy had called for peace, but received war instead. Yet through that war they had found something better than the peace they had originally sought. They had found hope, freedom, and the knowledge that tyranny could be defeated when brave beings stood together against oppression. Humanity had answered the call not as conquerors seeking glory, but as defenders fighting for justice. And in doing so, they had changed not just the balance of power in the galaxy, but the very nature of what it meant to be free among the stars.